Welcome back to the Federal Insights, a special edition discussion focusing on the customer experience, sponsored by Genesys here on Federal News Network. My guest today is Stephen Boberski, the Chief Technology Officer for the public sector at Genesys. And Steve, before the break, we were concentrating on the employee experience. How do you improve that, and how do you then bridge that to the customer experience, which is the basic focus of what some of the presidential executive orders are right now? Service to the citizen, better experience when people come to federal websites, and maybe not just websites.
Well, you know, there are myriads of ways to, you know, if you're focusing on both ends at the same time, right? You're using the same technology, right? So we talked about what the agent gets from the benefit from, what the experience is on the other side when you're focusing that empathy, which is important. But we sell, you know, we call it experience as a service. But that experience is all touch points, and it's making sure that you have visibility on all touch points, right? Because some of the data you gather is real-time practical from a, wow, this is the 36th time in the last hour someone's come directly from the website to the queue. There's probably a problem with the website that we didn't catch, right? Something as simple as that, or as, wow, this week, 150 different people have gotten stuck at this phase of passport renewal or wherever. Perhaps we can look at that process, right? So as the agents are getting that experience and learning, and the database begins to grow and the knowledge, you're drawing on what the experience from the customers are. And then you're going to make that improvement instantly. So the 151st person is not going to get stuck. And obviously you hope it's way before 151 people, but you know, it depends on how fast they're calling in, right? So, but we have the capability to have those analytics to in real time. You're not just, you know, everybody wants to know what the wait time, hold time, how long it's going to be. There's callbacks, so I don't have to wait and hold. That's all great technology, and it's important. But nobody's buying technology for technology's sake anymore, right? So we believe, again, focus on that experience for the employee and for the agent, and all those metrics takes care of themselves, like I said earlier. So one of the, you know, we talked a little bit about self-service, but bots in general, you know, there's chat bots. You can almost always tell when you're talking to a chat bot, right? It's not really a secret if it's really poorly done, but really it's, what do you do with the information you collect with that chatbot, right? So it's, you can try and do some automated service, and if it doesn't work, shoot them to an agent live and wait, right? But then you have to make sure that data still gets there, so you're not asking the same question the chatbot just asked for 20 minutes, right? That's all involved in routing to the right agent, right? So skills-based routing, you're now using data captured that you have to identify and say, make sure it's getting to the right agent, right? So it's all about improving the experience at every touch point. So, you know, it's also nice to know, to be able to, for the customer experience, let's take a web page, for example. And, you know, sometimes you've been to websites, as soon as you hit the website, you get an automated chat. Like, hey, look, I'm good, I don't need any help, stay away, you know.
Right.
But so it just pops up, right? So would it be nice if you had the ability to, and we can help you with this, as an agency, don't introduce that chat until you see that there's a problem, whether it's a timeout on a particular page, trying to hit a link a few times, or yes, of course, asking for help. But instead of just being, hey, how can we help, how can we help? Maybe they're just, you know, reading the web page. So those kind of things really do make an impact on the experience of the customer, right? And again, by the time they get to the agent, you know, it's like, oh, okay, really, it's about time, you know. So you want to be able to express, and if you know that that person has been in queue 3 or 4 times, they've dropped twice, they've tried the chat, you have the ability to say, hey, when this guy calls in next time or gal, route him straight to an agent. Don't even, you know, move him to the front of the line. You have the ability to do those kind of things, right? So there's natural language heuristics being developed right now where you can actually detect the emotional state of the caller. Mm-hmm. And now you're talking about compliance, you're talking about, you know, when you get certain hotlines, or, you know, a veterans line or a suicide hotline, or maybe a 911 contact center, you know, having that real-time analysis,
sure,
even before you answer the call, or while you're talking to them, getting that feedback, it can automatically maybe alert some other folks, you know, while you're still handling the call, which is, wow, I want to talk to this person, I don't want to lose the line, but they've said some key words that I absolutely need this specialist to cut on the phone, and they'll either bar, and it can notify and pull them in, right? So those kind of, I mean, that's a deep dive into a use case, but all those type of things exist. So there's so many opportunities, you know, everybody talks about AI when they talk about generally like, oh, it's just going to displace the agent. It's never going to displace, you're not going to displace the agent, right? So it's about making that agent's life better, and the ability to serve the customer better, which then makes the customer so much happier and so much more ready to call. If you take the emergency side out of the house, because there's a whole theory on how to address emergency situations with technology versus humans. But just in general, optimizing a website based on data you gather from people, bouncing from there to the call, or vice versa, right? How many people just in an IVR, right? They call in and they're trying to, just put in the data and get something back, right? So that automation's existed. You've been able to get your checking account balance over the phone for 30 years, right? But if it's something more process-oriented, like what is the status of my passport application,
right?
Or where's my tax refund, right? Maybe there's some triggers that would say, hey, you know what? That guy's held up because we want to talk to them, and we couldn't reach him. Let's pull him into a call. Now we can answer that question. So you have that ability. I mean, that's some very detailed analytics, but it's Bob. We couldn't reach Bob for like 3 weeks. He's now calling us. Someone has a problem. Make sure we get Bob, right?
The idea, though, is this is all tied in a multimodal system.
Absolutely. It's omni-channel, which is, it doesn't matter if it's email, chat, phone call, web chat session, or text, right? It doesn't even social media. There's social media hooks as well, right? So if they want to do a message directly from one of the domains, they absolutely can. If it's Facebook or Twitter, so that kind of, they would.
Right.
It's a great retail application outside of the federal government as well, right? But internally as well. When there's a real-time event going on, let's say an emergency response, social media blows up faster than anything, right? If you can capture that and you can respond to it on social media, citizens know that you're paying attention, right? And it's a great opportunity to catch that data.
And to get back to process and process improvement, I remember many years ago the IRS would examine forms, and as you mentioned, paper forms. When they saw significant numbers of people making the same mistake on a form, they would say maybe there's something wrong with the form, and they would redesign it. That could take a year, to get it in a paper form. What you're speaking about now, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the idea that if a certain significant number of people get hung up at a certain point in an online process, then maybe that process needs re-examining. Sounds like that can happen not in real time, but at least very quickly.
It can happen very quickly, of course. With all of this technology change on the front end, the organization of the government has to change with it, right? So you have to be prepared to make that response. Hey, I have all this data at my disposal. Who's looking at it and how quickly? So that's part of the equation, right? Which is, and this is why the training is so important. This is why the agent experience is so important, because as call times go down and wait times go down, some of your more experienced agents are available to help on the analysis side, right? And you can maybe, today you're going to be, taking a look at the data and you're going to be on response duty, right? Which is, you're going to monitor, besides the supervisor, you're going to help. And today we're going to address, hey, look, this is a hot item. So that's super important. The agencies must grow with the technology, right? Which is, hey, we're going to throw all this great stuff on the front end, and then all this data sits there and no one's looking at it. So it doesn't help to know that there's a problem with the website if there's no one to fix it, or the change process to fix the website is a board that doesn't meet till next Thursday, right? So those you have to adjust the process with that, and that's part of the analysis we help you with when we sit with you. So
right. So there has to be a view, a dashboard into what's happening on the line there. That's right. Back to agency managers that can do something about it.
Correct. Yeah, so there is a lot of mapping of process and who's who in the zoo as far as who's going to handle an issue, right? So some web, and it obviously depends on every agency. Their missions are different and how they respond and how web focused they are, or how chat or voice, right? So it's not easy to just spin up a new organization just to deal with this data, but there is an initiative from the federal government. Every cabinet level agency is supposed to have by now appointed a chief data officer, right? Knowledge management as a practice is growing. And so this is part of that practice. And these funds, I know it's getting to the end of the month, these funds are about to go away, but I know for a fact that a lot of the focus on that money has been forms and process to enhance, to make that experience better. It's not just buying technology, it's just, we want to fix this one thing, and then what goes with fixing that one thing in the ecosystem. So that is happening.
Right, the idea is to engineer out the problem and not just make continuous workarounds,
Correct.
Which are expensive, and you have the same frustration still deployed all that time.
Right, although it's still nice to be able to have an immediate workaround as well, right? So, if there is a problem with the website and you can't fix it, maybe you take that URL away, or maybe you say, when they click here, they're automatically directed somewhere, right? So there's that. It's definitely an iterative, and it's a growth process. This is not going to be an overnight change. You can't just drop technology in and suddenly, everything's fantastic. But there's so much that can happen, and part of the challenge is knowing where to start and how to insert, whether it's technology or process or both. How do you wrap that around where you are today? Because no one can transform overnight, right? People use digital transformation, they beat that to death as a concept, right? But you're really transforming the entire mission for the contact center and customer experience center for the agency.
What you want is for the data, the activities of that process, of that mission, to constantly feed the system so that you get a continuous learning, continuous improvement process, rather than suddenly, let's go transform.
Absolutely, and you can do the crawl, walk, run approach, right? Which is, you know, if you want to start with journey mapping and just capturing the touch points and do some analysis manually, or, you know, if not near real time, maybe you still have the, you know, you're just taking it in. I'm going to capture data for the next 3 months. What am I learning? This is absolutely a valid exercise. There are pilots you can do to take advantage of that as well. There's a lot of different programs, so you can try to sample the technology. It's a little more difficult in the federal space, right? Nothing's for free in the federal government, but you definitely, there are programs in place to make sure that it's a right fit for you as well.
All right. Well, on that note, we need to conclude, but I think you're the guy to call if anyone has a question.
Please do reach out.
All right. Steve Boberski is the Chief Technology Officer for the public sector at Genesys. I'm Tom Temin. You've been listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Genesys.